Alright, so this was like the craziest weekend of college football that I can remember in a long time. I mean, I lost track of how many upsets there were and how many teams ranked inside the top 15 lost this weekend. This was by far the hardest top 25 I've had to do because with so many teams losing, it was really difficult trying to figure out where all these teams needed to go now. But I did my best, so here's an updated look at my top 25 after a crazy week 6 of the college football season. Before we get to today's rankings, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. Now, this is a rarity, but it just goes to show how crazy of a weekend it is, but Texas, despite not even playing this weekend, they're actually going to move up to number 1. Staying in number 2, like they are every week, is Ohio State. They took down Iowa 35-7. Will Howard had a nearly perfect game as he completed 21 to 25 passes for 200 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. In typical Iowa fashion, they couldn't get anything going offensively, so Ohio State pretty much dominated this game on both sides of the ball. I got Penn State moving all the way up to number 3 after their 27-11 victory over UCLA. Drew Aller threw for 250 yards with a passing touchdown, meanwhile Kaytron Allen ran for just under 100 yards with a rushing score. Overall, I haven't been too impressed with Penn State so far to start the season, considering the best team they've played, I guess, has been Illinois, a team that they barely beat late in the fourth quarter last week. But the way things are going right now and with how many teams are losing, you can't really have them that much lower. I got Georgia next after their 18-point victory over Auburn. Carson Beck had another great game as he completed 23 of 29 passes, throwing for 250 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. I know it may be a little controversial to have him this high, especially considering their loss last weekend isn't looking all that great right now, but I still believe Georgia is one of the top teams in all of college football. Oregon is kind of how I feel about Penn State. They're undefeated and they should be ranked this high, but I haven't been all that impressed at all at any point this year from them. They're 5-0 and that's what matters, but they just don't have an impressive victory yet. They took down Michigan State 31-10 this weekend, and it was a pretty comfortable victory for them. Dylan Gabriel threw for 250 yards with 2 touchdowns, but he did have 2 interceptions. Again, the Ducks very well could be a top 5 to 10 team in college football, but I want to see how they look against an actually good opponent. Another week, another Miami controversy, with them escaping with another victory. They went on the road and took down Cal by 1 point. Now, this game looked like it was over, as Miami was trailing by 25 points, but they rallied late and they pulled off the shocking victory. Cam Ward added to his Heisman campaign as he threw for 450 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. At the end of the day, a win is a win, and Miami is 6-0 on the season. LSU was off this weekend, but I got them ranked this high. This is where I have Alabama falling as they lost to Vanderbilt 40-35. Now, I will give Vanderbilt credit because this isn't the same team we've seen over the last 5 years or so. This is actually a pretty decent team. But still, Alabama was a 23-point favorite. They were coming off a victory over the number 1 team in the country, and you lose to Vanderbilt. Jalen Milroe did all he could as he had nearly 350 yards of total offense with 2 touchdowns. But it was Alabama's defense who lost them the game as they allowed over 400 yards of total offense to Vanderbilt. For the game, the Commodores had 26 first downs, and the biggest takeaway for me is that they went 12 of 18 on 3rd down. Yeah, if you're Alabama and you're supposed to have one of the best defenses in the entire country, this cannot happen to Vanderbilt. Another insane takeaway when looking at this box score is the time of possession. Now, I will say I didn't watch this entire game. I watched bits and pieces of it, so I didn't realize when it was happening, but the fact that Vanderbilt had the ball for 42 minutes in this game, I mean, I don't remember ever seeing a game in which a team possessed the ball for 42 minutes. After looking like they were in the driver's seat for the SEC championship, this loss this weekend really makes things interesting for the Tide. Before we get to the rest of my rankings, I'd like to share with you guys how you can make the college football season more exciting and even win some money. I've partnered with Underdog Fantasy to bring you this amazing deal. If you download the Underdog Fantasy app and use promo code Harris, they'll match your first deposit up to $1,000. $1,000. That's right, they're giving you up to $1,000 of free money. You can choose your favorite players from every game and decide whether or not they'll go higher or lower than their projections. So to add a little extra excitement to every game and win some money, make sure to use promo code Harris for a 100% deposit match up to $1,000 at Underdog Fantasy. You guys can also sign up using the link in my description as well. Ole Miss bounced back after last week's shocking loss with a very easy 27-3 victory over South Carolina. Now, there were a lot of people calling for the Gamecocks to pull off the upset, but Ole Miss never was in any trouble at all. Jackson Dart had an okay performance, but he still threw for 300 yards and added 50 yards on the ground as well. Another really shocking upset this weekend was Tennessee losing on the road to Arkansas by 5 points. Entering the game, Tennessee was ranked number 4, and they were a 14-point favorite against the Razorbacks. They jumped out to a 14-3 lead midway through the third quarter, but they were outscored 17-0 the rest of the way. Tennessee is another team where I just haven't been all that impressed for them. Sure, they dominated NC State earlier in the year, but as we're starting to learn, NC State isn't all that good. They also had that victory against number 15 Oklahoma a couple weeks ago, but I don't think Oklahoma is worthy of being a top 25 team at all. Arkansas was probably the best team they played this season, and they lost. It'll be interesting to see how the Volunteers do in the second half when they play actually good opponents, including Alabama and Georgia. The Storm and Mormons of BYU didn't play this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Notre Dame was also off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. I will admit, I was very wrong on this Texas A&M team. After they lost in week 1, I was saying their chances of reaching the college football playoff are already shot, and this is the same old Aggies team. But they have proven me completely wrong. They dominated number 9 Missouri 41-10. I mean, this was a Missouri team that had playoff aspirations, and the Aggies completely embarrassed them. Connor Weigman had his best game of his career as he was nearly perfect, and he threw for 300 yards. Meanwhile, on the ground, Le'Veon Moss ran for 150 yards with 3 scores, while Amari Daniels rushed in 2 touchdowns as well. The Aggies have gone 5-0 after losing in week 1, and they're currently 3-0 in SEC play. As of right now, they're one of only 3 SEC teams that is undefeated in conference play, and they're in first place in the conference, meaning they are in the driver's seat to reach the SEC title game. Speaking of teams I was too harsh on early on, Clemson is another one. Now, I'm not going to give them too many flowers considering they beat Florida State by 16 points, but they've still won 4 straight games after an embarrassing loss in week 1. Cade Klubnik continues to look like an entirely different quarterback. He threw for 250 yards with 2 passing touchdowns while also adding 60 yards on the ground as well. Meanwhile, Phil Maffa had himself quite the day as he ran for over 150 yards. The ACC is making their case as being the best conference in all of college football this year, but Clemson currently sits atop the standings at 3-0 in conference play. Iowa State struggled to start the game, but they really turned things around at the end of the first quarter as they defeated Baylor 43-21. The Cyclones were actually trailing 14-3 midway through the second quarter, but they outscored the Bears 40-7 the rest of the way. Rocco Beck threw for just under 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, as a team, the Cyclones ran for 265 yards and had 2 rushing scores. Iowa State is now 5-0 on the season, and they're 2-0 in conference play. The Big 12 has also been really solid to start the season, as there are 5 teams that are currently undefeated in conference play. Kansas State was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Utah was also off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Boise State dominated Utah State 62-30. I mean, this game was over at the half as Boise State led 49-17. They pulled all their starters, and the backups had the entire second half. Ashton Genty continues to have one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen from a running back. He ran for 186 yards, averaging 14 yards per attempt. He also had 3 rushing touchdowns as well. Now, I'm actually kind of upset at Boise State for putting this game out of reach because they pulled Genty after the half. He put up these numbers in only 2 quarters of football. Had this game even been remotely close, they could have had him in the second half, and he probably would have ran for over 300 yards. I talked about this last week, but Genty is currently having one of the best seasons we've ever seen from a college football running back. This offseason, when I was reading hot takes from the comments in my YouTube videos, someone said that Indiana would win 10 games this year. Now, I thought that person was absolutely crazy, but it turns out they may have seen into the future. Indiana picked up another victory, moving to 6-0 on the season. They took down Northwestern by 17 points. Curtis Rourke continues to be one of the top quarterbacks in all of college football this season. He threw for just under 400 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns. I know a lot of people like to talk about Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State when talking about Big Ten teams, but Indiana is currently 3-0 in conference play, and they currently sit atop the leaderboard in the Big Ten conference standings. A team that has quietly come out of nowhere this year has been Pittsburgh, as they moved to 5-0 with their 34-24 victory on the road at North Carolina. Eli Holstein has been one of the more underrated quarterbacks in all of college football this season. He threw for 380 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns. He also led the Panthers in rushing with 75 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. The ACC has a lot of really good teams this season, but Pittsburgh is one of only 2 teams in that conference that is still undefeated on the year. SMU went on the road and knocked off number 22 Louisville 34-27. The Mustangs were a 7-point underdog, but they looked like the better team in this game. Quarterback Kevin Jennings was phenomenal for the Mustangs as he threw for 300 yards and added 110 yards on the ground with a rushing score. The Mustangs are another team we got to keep an eye on in the ACC this season, as they're 2-0 in conference play, and they're currently tied for the 2nd spot in the ACC standings. Texas Tech had a pretty big late night victory if you were watching this game when it ended at 11:45 p.m. Pacific time. They went on the road and took down Arizona 28-22. Taj Brooks continues to be one of the best running backs in the entire country as he ran for 130 yards with 3 rushing scores. Don't look now, but the team currently in first place in the Big 12 is Texas Tech, as they're sitting at the top 3-0 in conference play. They're also 5-1 overall on the season. This was a fun one late Friday night as Syracuse took down number 25 UNLV 44-41 in overtime. Kyle McCord continues to be one of the top quarterbacks in all of college football as he threw for 350 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. There were a couple people in the comments on my videos this offseason saying Syracuse was a team that we needed to keep an eye on, and it turns out they were right, because the Orange have been fantastic to start the 2024 season. Arkansas pulled off the shocking upset as they took down number 4 Tennessee 19-14. Quarterback Taylor Green led the way as he threw for 270 yards. Meanwhile, on the ground, Arkansas ran for 150 yards with 2 rushing scores. I know Arkansas is 4-2 on the season, but they have a couple of really close losses. Don't look now, but the Razorbacks are currently tied for 3rd in the SEC. Wrapping out today's top 25, I'm actually going to include 2 teams. I'm going to have both Navy and Army in there, as they're both 5-0 on the season. Navy took down Air Force 34-7, while Army took down Tulsa 49-7. Both teams are 5-0, and I truly don't know who is better, so that's why I'm going to include both of them as my number 25 team. Well, that wraps it up for today's top 25. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, this was the most difficult one I've done all season, as it was really difficult to move all these teams around. So what were your thoughts on the top 25? Was there a team that I had ranked too high, or a team ranked too low, or was there a team that I didn't even include at all? Whoever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos all season long, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share this video and my channel with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you all in my next video.